guys, it is Aoife from Words of Clover, and I'm here to do an April and a May wrap up. And yeah, I'm on my maternity leave. I have a little bit of time to get some videos done before baby arrives, so I decided I would try and catch up with some of the books I've been reading the last couple of months. Maybe I'll do a vlog, I don't know, it really depends on when she decides to show up. April was a pretty, not a very good reading month for me. I had one book that just made me really slumpy, and it just seemed to take ages for me to not even get through it, but get to the point where I was like, I just can't read this anymore. But I will be talking about that now in a minute, and so I'm going to combine my May wrap up as well, because I don't think there's any point in doing two separate ones. And yeah, the first book I want to talk about, thankfully, is a 5-star read, but it's also a reread for me, and that was The Cutting Place by Maeve Kerrigan, or The Cutting Place by Jane Casey, which is the ninth book in the Maeve Kerrigan series, which is a kind of a crime police series that I read, that I really, really enjoy. We're following a character called Maeve Kerrigan, who is like a detective inspector, I think it is, and I always don't know which one's like, whether it's like DI or DC, that's like the higher one. But we follow her normally as she's following like kind of like some different kind of murder cases, and we also see her dynamic with her partner Josh Derwent, who they kind of have this like hate-love relationship, but there's a lot of chemistry between them, but like you never really know if anything is ever going to happen between them, because it's been like literally like 9 books. But it's a very, very fun dynamic to read, and also her own experiences of being a woman in the police force, and just everything that comes with that as well. So yeah, in this one, she is looking into the murder of a young journalist who, it turns out, was looking into this kind of like private boys club, and it's basically opening up like this really, really shady like underworld of like the rich and influential people, and like this kind of weird kind of like, yeah, like men's club where women are brought and like some people go to and like disappear, and there's a lot of just like shady stuff going on into it. But the more she digs, like doors are being closed on her, because obviously a lot of these people have like a lot of money and they can kind of hush things up, and the more she digs, the more like extreme a lot of things end up looking as well. And in this one as well, we also see Maeve, she's in a relationship as well herself, and we kind of see how that is progressing. And I'm not going to say too much, but there are certain things that like happen in that relationship, and there are certain things that are kind of highlighted by the author during this relationship as well that I think are really, really important. And this is me, I reread this via audiobook. The audiobook was really, really good as well, and I just really enjoyed rereading it and kind of seeing so many different signs that maybe on my first read I didn't pick up as quickly. But yeah, this was an easy 5 out of 5 star for me, and I have since gone on and read the 10th book, which I will talk about in a bit as well. And the book that I really, really struggled with in April, the one that kind of made me really slumpy, was Mercury Pictures Presents by Anthony Marra, and this is the one I really, really thought I was going to enjoy. The cover of it is beautiful. It is a World War II novel set in LA, which I thought was a really interesting setting. It's not one that I've really read before when it comes to World War II. Like normally a lot of World War II is set in either like obviously around Europe, Germany, set in LA, and we're following a lot of people who are actually kind of in the movie business, and we're following particularly an Italian girl who emigrated to Italy when she emigrated to LA when she was younger, and her father is still in like this prison camp back in Italy, and we kind of follow her, find out her history, what happened to her father, why her father is in this prison camp, and then her connection to like all these other characters. And it was just, I could see what the author was trying to do. It was just like some of the characters were like quite eccentric in a way, and there was like a kind of quirkiness in a way to the writing, but I just felt like it wasn't going anywhere, and it was just extremely boring for me to read. And it was one of those ones that like no matter how much I read, I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with the book. So it was just really, really frustrating for me to read. So it took me like, I think it took me like 3 weeks, or at least 2 weeks, like most of the month, before I was like, I just can't read this anymore, and I actually DNF'd it. So I have it marked as like a 2-star read, because I think I got like 60% through, but I just couldn't finish it. I didn't want to. I had no interest in it at all. Even though, as I said, I did appreciate the voices that the author was trying to showcase for this time period in this location, what they were going through. And yeah, it's just a real shame that the writing just didn't work for me at all. So yeah, a very, very rare DNF for me. And thankfully I picked up an author who's normally a winner for me, and that is Marian, and I read The Mystery of Mercy Close, which is the 5th book in her Walsh family series, and this one wraps up kind of the 5 sisters main stories that we're following with this Walsh family series, and she has since gone on and kind of written spin-offs for Rachel and for Anna, and this one follows Helen, who is one of the more eccentric sisters, which is kind of saying a lot because they're all fairly eccentric in this family. But we're following Helen, who is having to move back home with her parents after she has like this private investigator business that is just kind of gone bust. There's no money coming in, and it's just, yeah, it's not really working out for her, so she ends up moving back in with her mum and dad, is not very happy about it. And there's a really big emphasis in this book actually about struggling with mental illness and particularly depression, and we find out very quickly that Helen has had a depressive episode in the past and she feels like maybe she is coming into one again, and we see how she struggles with that and how she kind of describes those feelings throughout the book, and also how her family reacted the first time to those depressive episodes, and how she's kind of afraid to also talk about it with her current love interest as well in the book, and her dynamics with certain people in the books as well in terms of this. And I just really liked how Marian Keyes highlighted this, and how Helen in like the past books has seemed like a really like happy-go-lucky kind of character. She seems like a really go-getter type of character. You never really know what she's going to come out with, what she's going to do next, and then to see her in this book and see those inner struggles that you would never know about probably from the outside, I thought was a really good way of being able to, with in terms of like any of the characters Marian Keyes I guess could have chosen to exhibit maybe these like kind of like this like depression. I think choosing Helen was a really good idea, because it goes to show that like people can hide it really, really well, and it can happen to anyone. So as well. So and then this one was really fun because she is looking actually into the disappearance of this boy band member, who has disappeared right before this big reunion. Basically, kind of someone like he's kind of in a band that would have been very similar to like Westlife or Take That, and the manager, who's an old friend of hers, is kind of going a bit crazy because they don't know where this guy is, and yeah, they need to find him. So she's trying to find him, and I did see where, like, I wasn't surprised by where it ended up. I don't think there was many like big like twists in terms of like surprises with this one. Very early on I was like, with Helen's own storyline, I was like, I feel like I know where this is going, and it did go there, but I still enjoyed it. It's not my favourite Walsh family book, but I just love, like, I think they're just all mad and I do really enjoy them, so I gave this like a 3.5 stars overall. But yeah, then another audiobook I listened to in April was The Woman of the House by Alice Taylor, which is the first book in a series or a trilogy called Mossgrove, and this is a historical fiction series set in, I think it's around maybe the 50s or 60s in rural Ireland, and we are following, I think it's the Phelan family, and this is a very kind of like simple, I don't know if I described it as like a nice read, because there's not like loads of nice things that happen in it, but it's a very kind of like simple book in a way that made the reading experience nice. So we are following a family called the Phelans, who have owned this farm called Mossgrove for a very, very long time, and at the start of the book a really tragic accident happens where like the father of the family unfortunately passes away, and we see the farm, kind of like the farm hand, but he's like basically lived and worked with his family for almost his entire life, so he's almost like a granddad or an uncle to the kids of the family. And also the sister who like grew up on the farm, it's her family's farm, but because she is like obviously the younger daughter, she didn't inherit the farm, and she's a nurse who lives in the town. The two of them are trying to look after the children of the family, while the wife of the farmer who died is not a very nice person and is thinking of selling the farm, particularly to like these like neighbors who are kind of like enemies, and it would be like a really terrible thing for them to get the farm, and she's basically just kind of doing it out of spite and like just like bad feelings, because she just has this like kind of weird like chip on her shoulder for like no reason that like people don't like, I don't know, it's like, it's really weird. She just like decided that like she didn't like anyone in her husband's family and has treated them really, really badly over the years, and they've kind of just put up with it because obviously they like, like Kate loves her brother and didn't want to be like shunted out of the family, and you just see how they've been treated like for a very long time by this woman, and it's very hard to read. Like it's like there's no reason why she would be as horrible as she is, and the way she acts is like very hard to read, and because she's like part of the family, she doesn't really get like a lot of like comeuppance or anything. Like you can't really like, there's no like revenge that could be taken on her because she's like a very central part of the family, and like anything that would happen to her would affect the children and stuff like that. So we just follow the struggles of like what's going to happen to this farm. Are they going to be able to sell it? Is there some weird way that they can like convince her one not to sell it, even though she's fairly, you know, set in her ways. And then also we kind of see some of Kate's story. We kind of see some of Kate's story as well as being a nurse in like the local area, and she kind of goes around and like helps people locally. And there's like kind of a side story around one of the not nice families called the Conways to do with a little girl, and Kate trying to protect this little girl. And I thought Alice Taylor is like, she does write the kind of rural country. It's actually my first Alice Taylor book, so I do actually need to read more of her books because my gran really, really likes Alice Taylor. My dad also really likes Alice Taylor. But I thought the fact, the way someone's spoken things in here around kind of like child abuse, or like, you know, a father like abusing his daughter, and the way it's kind of done in like his kind of subtle way, but the way it's done and the way kind of different people in the community come together to try and help this little girl was just like a really nice thing to see. And there was also a nice moment in which Kate stood up to I think it was the priests she stood up to, and it was just like this really nice moment as like seeing this woman who's like smart and articulate and like knows her own worth and standing up to a priest and basically, not in so many words, but kind of telling him to go fuck himself. And I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think I gave this one a 4 to 5 stars. As I said, it was quite a simple book to read, but I did enjoy it, and I think I will go on and read the second and third book, which kind of, I think you follow the family as the kids as they get a bit older and like more things with the farm. And I did say this kind of reminded me a little bit of Under the Hawthorn Tree by Marita Conlon McKenna, but like more for like adults. It's kind of that simple type of writing, showcasing a particular type of Irish lifestyle and family at a particular time in Ireland's history as well. I enjoyed it. And then another audiobook I read was Friendaholic by Elizabeth Day. So this is a non-fiction look at friendship and like female friendship in particular. With true Elizabeth Day, she's kind of like, it's kind of like a memoir of hers talking, but like kind of talking about her different friends. And I enjoyed this one for the most part. I listened to Elizabeth Day's podcast, How to Fail, so her voice is very familiar to me, so I actually found the reading experience or the listening experience of this book really enjoyable, because as I said, like it does feel like you're just listening to a very long extended version of her podcast, but she's talking about herself rather than having a guest on. And then for like one of the things I will say about this, and I've seen other people talk about this as well, but because I also listen to her podcast, I'm very aware of Elizabeth Day's struggles in terms of pregnancy loss, infertility, miscarriage, things like that, because she talks about it a good bit on her podcast, and so I kind of knew that this would probably come up in this book, and I did see some other people talk about it as well, and it does come up quite strongly in terms of how people supported her during her like how friendships supported her during these times, how they didn't support her, things she was maybe going through with friends when she was also going through these like struggles with pregnancy. So if you're someone who maybe doesn't want to be reading about that, or like you're sensitive to that, that's just a warning for this book as well, that she does kind of go fairly into her own struggles and her own grief and kind of acceptance over not being able to carry a child. So yeah, I gave this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. I did enjoy it as a listen. I don't think I got anything like amazing out of it, but I do think women talking about the friendships, the ones that support them, the ones that didn't, is still a really important thing to talk about, because friendships do tend to be some of the biggest loves of your life, so they are important. And I like the fact that she had male and female friendships in this. It wasn't just a focus on female friendships. Oh yeah, that's one thing that she doesn't really go into like friendships like the scientific thing of friendships and friendships as a whole. She's very much focused on her own insular experience of friendship, and what that means to her and her friends, rather than like a whole kind of like friendship, like humans and friends, and like as a thing. Like she kind of, and there was a part that I felt like she kind of talked down a little bit around like male friendship and like that kind of like bro friendship that men have, and I would have liked a little bit more in terms of the type of friendships men have, how they can be different, but how can they can be just as important as well. So yeah, that would have been good, but unfortunately it wasn't quite there. But it was mostly her own, as I said, it was kind of like her own type of, it was more of a memoir in friendship form, being told through her friends. And then I finished a trilogy, a fantasy trilogy, and that was Sorcerer's Edge by David Hare. This is the third and final book in the Tethered Citadel trilogy, which I started last year, and I have quite enjoyed. We are following a world where there is a particular type of magic that people can do, and there is like two types of this magic. There's one that is very, very controlled and one that's not so controlled, and the one that's not so controlled is kind of looked at as a bad magic and they don't let people wield it. And then there's this like really big kind of colonizer country that is like the big bad, and they go and like do a lot of bad things to all these other little countries. So we are following a particular character who is a rebel. His country's been taken over. He is a sorcerer, and he ends up with his daughter and a bunch of other kind of rebel people. They go on this journey to try and find this particular type of mineral that helps strengthen their magic, and could be like mined and sold for like a lot, and could also help with this like big war they have against the big colonizer. And they go to this kind of like almost like undiscovered land, and they meet like the locals that are there, kind of like a more indigenous population. But then obviously, because people are like, there's an army that is following them, they kind of bring trouble into this land as well. So we kind of see three types of people fighting, but then some of them team up, and like there's a whole world. There's romances, there's a lot of politics, there's magic, there are ancient beings, there's history, religion, there's a lot of things going on with this one. This one was quite fast paced, but yeah, this was good. I enjoyed the trilogy as a whole. I don't have that much to say about it. I don't think it was the most amazing trilogy ever. I do still think the first book was particularly good. The second book was like so, and the third book, there's parts of the third book that I did enjoy. I think there could have been a lot more in this around kind of the colonizer country. It feels like there was a lot of things that were kind of left, not undone, but it kind of feels like, yeah, there could be so much more in this world to be explored maybe. It's like a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. So yeah, April was definitely kind of like a middling month for me when it came to books. The first book was probably like my favourite book, and that was a reread. But then for May, I read 10 books, so it was much better. So the first book I read was The Warm Hands of Ghost by Katherine Arden, and this one was one I was really, really looking forward to, because I love Katherine Arden's, not Winter of the Witch, I think Winter of the Witch, her series around like her Russian series that she does. I really, really, really love that book. I love the magic, I love the writing, I love, yeah, the prose in it. I just love it. So I was really, really looking forward to this one. And in this one we were following a character who is a nurse. She's quite like a stern character who doesn't take a lot of like shit, and we follow her at the start. She learns that her brother is missing in action, so it's like 1918, during World War One. They're based in Canada, I think it is, and her brother has gone missing in the front, and he's presumed dead, and she just thinks it's really weird that like she hasn't been given any I think it's, did she get us 2 dog tags? And she's like, that's really weird that I'd have 2 of his dog tags, not just one. And there's just something weird about it, that she's like, I feel like there's more to this story. So she ends up going to Belgium with 2 other women, one of who is also a nurse, and she goes back to the front to kind of help on the front line, but also to search for her brother. And we're also seeing her brother's perspective from like months earlier, as he is caught up in something that happens to him while he's on the front line, and he gets caught up with another soldier, and then the 2 of them all end up caught up in something else with someone who is not quite human and slightly magical in a way. Someone who's just called a fiddler, who is, you know, a little bit of a, I wouldn't say like succubus, but can kind of like take people's time away from them in a way that they don't even realize. And we're seeing how her brother's struggling with that, and also struggling with things that he has done himself, like obviously in the war, and then also at the same time then we're like going back and forth between him and then his sister, who is out looking for him and trying to find out desperately if he is still alive. I didn't mind this book. It just, I don't know, it just didn't really do that much for me in terms of historical fiction. I do normally love World War II fiction. I just thought the speculative, like, magical element of it, I just wasn't vibing with it that much. I do still think the writing is beautiful, and the characters Catherine Arden creates are quite striking at times. I did really like the main character who we're following, the woman, and I just liked the fact that she was quite hard in a way that, like, I feel like you don't see all the time, but I feel like it would be very realistic for someone who's worked on the front line and probably seen so many horrible things. There's like a hardness to her. There's like like this hard shell that's very hard to crack through. And I liked that about her. Like, she's felt like someone who would, like, you could depend on. So yeah, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, but kind of looking back on it, it's more of a 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah, a little bit disappointing, but can't love all of them, I guess. And then thankfully a 5-star for me was A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin. This one I really, really enjoyed. Jane Austen-esque type of romance. We're following a character called Eliza, who has recently been widowed. She's been married for about almost 10 years, I think. She's now like 27, and she has basically been in a marriage where her husband was always telling her what to do. She was very kind of like meek and subservient, and also before that her family always told her what to do, and now she's finally, you know, a woman of, you know, she has a little bit more freedom as a widow versus as a single young girl, and then she also ends up coming into a little bit more money than she ever has before, and she kind of grasps this freedom with 2 hands, and she decides to go to Bath for a season, to experience like being able to paint and being able to go to like shows and to socialize in a way that she just felt like she's never really been able to before. And through this she ends up meeting an old kind of flame of hers, someone who she almost married if it wasn't for her family, and she doesn't know how he feels about her. Like, they kind of obviously ended on a bad note, and because of this gave me a lot of Persuasion vibes, where I was like, ooh, is this going to be like a Persuasion retelling where, like, you know, the old flame comes back and they kind of like figure things out, because there were times Eliza felt like slightly like Anne in that way, but then we also see that she ends up striking up another friendship with another man called Melville, and he's a little bit more of a risk when it comes to romance, for many different reasons. He's a little bit of a drama around town, is the best way to describe it. But I really, really enjoyed just like the way this story was told. I loved the drama that happened. I loved seeing Eliza's character strength, like progression, from like where she started in the book of being this like really like mild, meek character, and it was really frustrating to see her allow other people to talk over her and tell her what to do and not stand up for herself. It was so hard to see that, and then see the type of woman she is near the end of the book, where she's like doing things for herself and really like admitting to herself what she wants and what she is willing to give up or to do that, or what she's not willing to give up. And I just really enjoyed seeing that. It was just really, really nice to see. And then I just really loved the romance in it as well, and where the romances goes. There's obviously, as I said, there's a little bit of a love triangle here, but yeah, kind of, I was really worried for a while about which direction it was going to go in, but I was very happy with the direction it did go in. And yeah, I just absolutely love this. I have Sophie Irwin's next book. I don't think it's in the A Lady's Guide like series that she's doing, but I do have her next book, on Neck Alley, which I'm hoping to read this summer, because I just really like the 2 of her books now. I think I've gotten 5 out of 5 stars, and I just really, really enjoy her writing. And this is very much, it's not hot and steamy, it's definitely more Jane Austen-esque versus like Bridgerton. So there's not like these like hot steamy scenes. It's more like a stolen look, or like fingers touching by accident, or you know, things like that. Like it's a lot more, there's a lot more of like hidden depths with feelings, rather than being out there with like touching and kissing and stuff like that, or like steamy scenes, which I like, because I feel like sometimes it's nice to step back and get those kind of more romantic moments versus like smutty moments. So yeah. Then an audiobook I listened to was The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. This is his second book in the library trilogy that he has. This is kind of impossible to describe. We're following a very vast magical library, and we're following two characters who find themselves in this library separated by circumstance and by time, and they're kind of trying to find their way back to each other. One thing I will say about this book series is, if this book series was written by a woman, I am convinced it would be classed as a romantasy, but it is not. It is classed as like, you know, proper high fantasy, and because it is Mark Lawrence, that is what he writes. Or he writes kind of dark fantasy. Yeah, this one is very vast. It's quite convoluted in ways, as I said, it's quite hard to describe, but I do really enjoy the audiobook listens of this. The narrator is very, very good. We follow like a new set of characters and a new timeline in this one as well, and it kind of eventually like all leads up to our main characters and how they're all intermingled into this world. Still can't really describe or like explain what is happening. It's a little bit like Piranesi in a way, where it's like you just kind of have to go along with the flow of it and trust that the author is going to like have things click into place for you. But if you actually try and describe it to people, it's very, very hard. But I want to say magical library, magical creatures, star-crossed lovers, romance. Like, one of the big things in this book, particularly like from the second book onwards, is these characters trying to get back together, which is why I'm like, if it was written by a woman, I feel like people would call it a romantasy, because the romance in this is, while it's not like super sexual or anything, it's like, it's a very big deal in the book. But I loved seeing some of our side characters from the first book step up in the second book and kind of become more in this book. I just really enjoyed that, and seeing kind of friendships form, unlikely friendships form as well, and seeing what happened to them. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the third book, which I think I have on NetGalley, which I'm going to try and read soon as well, just while everything is fresh in my head, because this is the type of book where I feel like it's beneficial to read a lot of them quite close together, because there's so much happening, and because I said it's kind of like a convoluted, confusing type of story in terms of you just have to go with the flow of it. So if you have too much time in between the books, I feel like you would probably forget a lot. So I gave that one like 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read a set of short stories, which is God's Children Are Little Broken Things. But this is a set of short stories set in Nigeria. We're following mostly like gay men in Nigeria, and looking at this kind of the gay men experience in Nigeria, and the people who are like still closeted, the type of relationships they have, the types of way they are treated by friends and family, and yeah, it was just, I actually, for the most part, I enjoyed a majority of the stories in this. I think God's Children, Little Broken Things, which is like obviously the title story, was probably one of my least favourites. But yeah, I did really enjoy this one. Obviously this is focusing on gay men in particular. I actually would have liked to have a few stories of like what the experience of what it would be like for like a gay woman in Nigeria. I feel like that would be interesting. But yeah, I did enjoy this as a set of short stories, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And then after that was another reread for me. I listened to this one via audiobook. It was very short. It was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which is one of her like award-winning books. We're set in the 80s in Ireland, and we're following a character who is like, he owns like his own coal business, and we see him kind of come up against like the Magdalene laundries in Ireland, and this kind of like the power of the church, and this decision of whether to speak out or not when you know bad things are happening, and what to do, and kind of the struggle with conscience and yeah, expectation and societal pressure and stuff like that. So yeah, I just love this one. I think Claire Keegan is just a wonderful writer. I think the first time I read this, I gave this like a 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5, where second time I'm like, it's an easy 5 star because it's Claire Keegan and she writes beautifully. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I enjoyed rereading it. So kind of weirder rereading it like during the summer months, because we had a very sunny May. We're not having a sunny June, because this is obviously set during winter and snow and cold and stuff. But I still did really enjoy this, and I'm definitely going to try and reread Foster as well by Claire Keegan, which is one of my favourites of hers. So I'd like to reread that soon, hopefully via audiobook as well, I think. After that, I read the 10th book in the Maeve Kerrigan series, which is The Close by Jane Casey. This one takes place about a year after The Cutting Place, which is the first book I talked about in this wrap-up. And we're following Maeve and her partner Josh as they go undercover in this small kind of neighbourhood to try and basically catch someone out in what they believe is like a kind of horrific crime thing happening, but the two of them have to go undercover and pretend to be like a couple, and because of, as I have said before, they do have this kind of chemistry together, and also things that have happened to Maeve in The Cutting Place, we see a lot of tensions are arising. It's kind of hard for them at first, but then we see how they very quickly fall into how easy it would be to be a real couple, and we see this is like the first book where I feel like it's been really acknowledged that the two of them, like, there are feelings there between the two of them, and if they wanted to act on it, they would. But the two of them, like, there are things in the way, and the way this book ends up is kind of like, I thought we were like almost there, and then the way the book ended up, I was like, oh god, I don't know if there's like any hope for the two of them now. Even though they're still in like a fine place. But I'm kind of like, where are we going to go with this now, like in terms of potential romance or anything. But I did actually really enjoy the actual crime in this. I thought there was like two different ones. So there's like the main one that they are focusing on, and there's kind of a side one happening that we are kind of aware of as readers, but Maeve and Josh aren't quite aware of yet, but we see it kind of in the background. And I did enjoy seeing how all that ended up as well. I think it's always done really well. It's nice and pacey, just kind of keeps you hooked. One of the things I did really enjoy in this book as well is that there has been a side character called Georgia, who is like another police officer who was always kind of like rubbed Maeve up the wrong way, and it always felt a little bit like, you know, girls hating on girls kind of thing, where some of it was substantiated, like Georgia does do a lot of stupid things sometimes, and other times Maeve was just like not giving her a chance, or not giving her the benefit of the doubt around things. And we do see in this book where their relationship has gotten a lot better, and then it goes from strength to strength in this book, where we see them become a lot more friendly with each other and like work together really well. And I really, really enjoyed seeing that, and I really enjoyed seeing Maeve finally give Georgia her chances of stepping up and doing better and like actually teaching her properly. And I really enjoyed that, because I felt like it was a long time coming, and it was one of those things that did rub me up the wrong way sometimes around how Maeve would sometimes view some of the other women on the force, bar one of her best friends who was on the force. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and this was another easy 5 out of 5 stars for me. And my only thing is I don't want to be like reading all of them that are out, because there's only a couple left now, and I don't want to be left with like nothing to read. But I do kind of feel like, similar to Karen Slaughter books, I do kind of feel like if I had to, I would go back to the start and just start reading these. I feel like these are just really easy ones to constantly cycle through, like going back, like kind of like your favorite like TV series. Yeah, I just love them. Then I read a historical fiction book called The Tudor Bride by Joanna Hickson. This one is following Queen Katherine, who was the wife of Henry VI. Yes, the wife of Henry VI. And this is the second book. So first we did have the Agincourt wife, which was the first book, and we follow her like growing up, and then this one is following her when she becomes Queen of England, and what happens after that, like, because if you know history, her husband died young enough. She did have a son she married King Henry V, and then she had a son who's King Henry VI, and then that ended up into the War of the Roses, where King Edward became king, and then everything that happened there, where you have King Henry VII and Henry VIII, and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing about Katherine is that she was the mother of King Henry VI, but then she would have been the grandmother of King Henry VII, and would have been great grandmother, I guess, of Henry VIII. So yeah, so she does like literally on both the way things go for her. Her lines were like all kings and queens. So yeah, it was just interesting. We were getting her life story basically through Metty, who was kind of like a character from the first book, who was actually like her nurse maid, like her wet nurse, from the time she was born, and then she's with her basically her entire life. And in this one, she's with her through her marriages and her children, all her children, and as they grow older together, a lot of like political upheaval, crazy decisions that she has to make, like separations from her children, her son, illnesses, stuff like that. And yeah, it's just I really liked following it through Metty versus through Katherine herself, because you see ways in which Katherine is used and abused by people that she doesn't even realise, where Metty can see it, where and times where Metty isn't like treated as well as she could be by Katherine because of the hierarchy there as well. And then you also see like different things that Metty is going through herself, like in terms of her own relationships and her children, and yeah, what's going on in France at the time, and then they moved to England, and yeah, just her loyalty to Katherine for her whole life is just really lovely. And yeah, I just thought like this is a really just nice way of like learning a little bit about history. I think the writing in it is really, really good. Joanna Hickson's writing in this one is particularly good. I did read something a few years ago by Joanna Hickson, was The Lady of the Ravens, which I remember not enjoying as much as this one in terms of the writing style, but I must go back and like read my review of that to see how I actually felt about it. But yeah, this one, if you like a really good chunky historical fiction, particularly following women, the Agincourt, I think it's the Agincourt wife or the Agincourt something, and the Tudor Bride, both following Catherine de Valois, are really, really good. So I would recommend them. And then the last fiction book I have for May is The Rebound by Katherine Walsh. This is the second book by Katherine Walsh I've read, and she has become an auto-read author for me. And I really love the fact that she's a romance author who's Irish, and like her characters are Irish and they happen in Ireland, and yeah, I really, really like that. I read one of her Christmas books back in December, which I absolutely loved. I read it like on one flight. I just could not stop reading it. So this one is not Christmassy, it's just like a normal romance book, but it is following a character who called Abby, who has had to come back to her hometown because she was living in New York. She was kind of in like this like the financial sector in New York, and basically her company's completely gone bust in terms of complete mismanagement of funds, like embezzlement and stuff. So she's basically lost like everything. And before this, she also, her fiance broke up with her, so she's no fiance, no apartment, no job. Because of the way her job is gone, she's lost all her savings and everything, so she literally has nothing. So she has to come home, tail between her legs, and live with her sister for a little while. And we see very quickly like there's kind of like tension between her and her sister, because they're just very different people. She herself, like, she's just in a bad place. She doesn't know where to go next. Her confidence is gone. She's trying to obviously find new jobs desperately, but no one is it's not that no one is hiring, but because so many people in her sector have lost their jobs, the market is just, there's so many people looking, so she's not having a lot of luck. And we see her kind of reconnect with an old friend of hers called Luke, who is also in the town, and the two of them have a spark and a connection, but there's a lot of like miscommunication and ups and downs with this relationship, even though it's very obvious that the two of them are like really into each other. And I just really enjoyed this one, not as much as my Christmas book, but I still did enjoy the chemistry. I think Katherine Walsh just like writes really, really good chemistry between her characters, without again it being like in your face sex scenes or anything. There's just like that longing, that chemistry, the fizzle between them is like really, really good, and I really, really enjoyed it. And one of the things I really enjoyed about this book is I feel like you see a lot of like in both like romance movies and romance books is like this thing of, high-flying city girl comes home and finds out that everything she needs has been in this tiny village all along, where it's really obvious the type of person Abby is and the type of job she needs to be in is that she's never going to fit into a small town. Like, she needs to live in a city for many different reasons, and I feel like I really like that trope of must settle in a small town is kind of squashed in this book. And I liked how how they worked out with that, and yeah, how it all ended up. I did really enjoy it. So yeah, this was a 4 out of 5 stars for me, and I will definitely be reading more of Katherine Walsh. And then I have 2 books to read. I have 2 books to talk about here that are kind of like pregnancy, maternity books. So if you don't want to listen to me talk about that, that is absolutely fine. One of the ones I read was one I got from the library, which is Give Birth Like a Feminist, which is your body, your baby, your choices, which is just more talking about consent and yeah, like what does it mean to give birth like a feminist, by Milli Hill. And this one I enjoyed because I feel like it just kind of reminded me of things I can say no to, or like just reminded me of how important my own voice is when it comes to being in both just like appointments, but also when it comes to delivering this baby. Like my choices matter and my birth preferences matter, obviously to a point, but this kind of thing that we do see a lot of, like people saying, well, all you want at the end is a healthy baby. Obviously we all want a healthy baby, like that is, like no one is saying that that's not what they want, but wanting your choices to be heard and your choices to be respected doesn't mean that you're a bad mother either. And having a traumatic or a bad birth can lead to complications further down the line as well, in many different ways. And yeah, so this just reminded me of how important it is for me to speak my mind when it comes to it, and not to be afraid to do that, and also to remind my husband that if I can't speak, he has to speak for me. So yeah, a few things I didn't like about this book was I felt like it was very, very pushy in terms of home birth is the best type of birth you can have. Like there are many different reasons why. I just dropped my phone, so if the angle changed, that's why. There are many different reasons why people can't or don't want to have a home birth, and I think kind of pushing it that it's the only real way of being able to give birth without, like, in terms of like it being the best, like I just think, yeah, I just don't like that at all. And then there was an added chapter in the book that I read, and that was added on after publishing, that was kind of very transphobic, I would guess. She talks about like why she's using, obviously, like she, her pronouns in this book, and talking about women giving birth. She's basically saying how she feels like when it comes to power dynamics and consent and stuff like that, being a woman in a room is a really big part of that, like, you know, you're not going to be listened to because of your gender. And that's one of the reasons why she decided not to change any language in this. But then I'm also thinking, yeah, but like she's completely missing the point that obviously being like a trans or non-binary person in a labour room is probably so much harder, that like your choices aren't even listened to, like not just necessarily in terms of how you want to have this baby, but potentially like how you want to be addressed during that like period. Like maybe like you don't want to be addressed as mom or mother, or you know, you want to be like, you want to have, or pronouns, things like that. Like it's a whole other layer, and it's like she completely missed that point. Then she was kind of like, oh, talking about how like J.K. Rowling tweeted in support of her, and I was like, okay, you've lost me now. You've completely lost me. Like, no. So I did give this a 3 out of 5 stars, but the reason I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars is because it's like all before that, in terms of like what I have gotten out of it, in terms of kind of appreciating my own voice. But I do still feel like that whole chapter could just not have been in there. I think it ruined the book in a way. But what I will say is I'm reading a different book at the moment that's more about hypnobirthing, and everything that she's kind of saying in this book, in Give Birth Like a Feminist, is said in the same, is said in a slightly different, nicer way in the hypnobirthing book. So if I was actually to recommend one or the other to people, I'd be recommending the hypnobirthing book and not this book. And the hypnobirthing book actually has like loads of positive birth stories, where Give Birth Like a Feminist, all the birth stories in it are actually quite negative. So depending on how you feel about birth, how scared you are about a hospital room, it could actually really put you off, where the hypnobirthing book is a lot more positive. But I only appreciated Give Birth Like a Feminist because, as I said, it reminded me that I can and am able to and should use my voice during my experience, and doing it doesn't mean that I'm a bad mother or that I don't care about my baby. So yeah. And then luckily, another book that didn't have any of those problems, was The Modern Midwife's Guide to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond by Marie Louise. Marie Louise is actually on Instagram as The Modern Midwife, so I'd also, if you are pregnant or thinking about being pregnant, or you know, like interested, I would follow her. She gives loads of like kind of good advice and tips and just like facts and stuff about pregnancy and babies and baby care and stuff like that. And this is basically a book that I actually didn't read in May. I've been reading since I found out I was pregnant, but I've been reading it in bits, but I finished it in May. And I just really enjoyed this one. This was just like really easy to read. As I said, it's one you can pick up and put down depending on where you are at your stage of pregnancy. I think it's just really friendly, and there's no scaremongering or in it or anything. She's just like, it's almost just like this just like really friendly voice. I can really imagine her in the labour room with people. I say she's just like a really nice midwife to have with you, like while you're giving birth. I say she's very calming and nice and supportive. And yeah, I actually think this is a good one for pregnant people to read, but also birth partners as well. So I actually have tabbed a lot of pages that I have given my husband to read. Has he read them yet? No, but he's on a timeline now. He has to, if he wants to get them done. But yeah, so I gave this like a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's one that I've recommended to my friends who are pregnant, of which there are quite a few of us at the moment. So yeah, though obviously I can't speak too much of the actual tips and things that she's saying about labour, because I haven't yet to go through it. So I'll know after all of that whether it's really helpful or not. But yeah, those are the 10 books, 10 books, 17 books I think that I've read over the past 2 months. A very long video. I hope you had a cup of tea or something to keep you company. I need to stand up now because I have gone completely stiff sitting down. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. Please leave a comment down below. Hopefully I'll be able to get back with like a vlog or something, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.